Good morning, and I'm here this morning in Edmonton and speaking to you guys about the value proposition. And I'm actually happy to be first because first I get my speech over with, right? but second of all, I really believe the value proposition is a foundational piece for our retention strategies and also our recruitment strategies. So I think it's so appropriate to be speaking to value proposition first. So welcome, and I enjoy spending the morning with you. I want to start with a little cartoon, and this cartoon speaks to me on a number of fronts. First of all, it's hard sometimes for us to know what is it that attracts our people to our organization and what keeps our people in our organizations. And sometimes we have to do things and we just wish we could have them to the desk because we invest so much in them and we don't want them to leave. I think I'm actually tied to this podium. I'm never tied to a podium. I'm usually walking around. So that's the second reason I can really relate to this cartoon this morning. But the value proposition that we're going to talk about today is really, as I said, a foundational piece where you can build your other programs, your processes on top of it. So we're going to get started and sort of just walk you through what is the value proposition, how do you build it, and why is it important. Before we do that, though, I just want to share a statistic with you. Many of us in this room went through the 2007-2008 recession. And I was operating my business back then, working with clients, working with CEOs, and I found this statistic that 12% of high potentials in companies studied back in 2007 and 2008 said that they were actively searching for a new job during the recession. And here we are again. We're in the middle of a recession, and that is why it is so important for us to be here today, because our high performers are paying attention to how they're being treated within your organization. They're paying attention to how their organizations treat them as an employee, because if they're not happy, guess what they're going to do? They're going to walk. They're going to walk as soon as things start turning around. So I'd like to suggest today that the value proposition that we're going to talk about is going to be one of your strategies to help you retain, particularly your high performers. You don't want to lose them. So we need to be paying attention. What does it take to keep them? So hopefully when you're walking the session or at lunchtime, we'll have a few nuggets from all of us that will help you keep your high performers. Because without a doubt, your high performers are looking and watching and seeing what's unfolding. And we will eventually come out of this recession. And that's why the work that we do today is so very, very important. So over the next 45 minutes, I just want to talk a little bit about the value proposition, what is it, and why is it so important in an organization that we walk the talk, that we don't just do things for the sake of doing it, so we don't put a value proposition together and then just walk away and post it on our website and then walk away from it. Why it's so critically important to make sure as leaders in an organization we're walking the talk. As leaders, we are watched by employees, so we really need to make sure that we're walking the talk, and we're also coaching our leaders to walk the talk. And we also want to make, the lovely thing I like about the value proposition is that you can measure it. So if you spend the time properly defining it, you can actually measure it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that measurement piece would look like with respect to the value proposition. And one of the things that I'm hoping you'll also take from this morning is that with respect to your retention strategies, value proposition being a foundational one size does not fit all. So that when you're looking at building strategy, when you're looking at building policies and procedures, or whatever you do to keep your people, attract them and keep them, pay attention to your audience. And we have sometimes up to 5 generations in our workplace today. So it's really important that we pay attention to what each of those generations need in our workplace, and it's certainly not one size fits all. So hopefully we'll touch on that over the course of the morning. The value proposition is really, it's your employer brand. It's the brand that you speak to. How many here have actually are in an organization where they've spent time on defining the employment brand? Anybody? It's usually what the marketers do, right? It's what our marketers do with respect to how do they communicate within their organization and to the community about what they're all about. That's the employment brand. And what I like to think about is the value proposition is really your employment brand as it speaks to your employees. So it's the same way as your organization would market yourself to the community. Your value proposition is the brand that you market and speak to your employees. So what I tell people when they're talking about the value proposition, if you ever get an opportunity to work throughout your organization with your marketing people and they're defining the employment brand, ask if you can also work on the value proposition, because it's the messaging about your organization that needs to be consistent. So the employment brand is the messaging you give to the community about what you're all about, and your value proposition is exactly the same messaging. It's who you are. How do you define yourself? It's everything about the experience that a person has when they come and work for you. The same as a client that comes and gets service from you. It should be exactly the same. They need to have that alignment. They need to feel and experience exactly the same thing. I always say when I go into an organization, I can feel the brand. I can feel the value proposition. You can sometimes see it on people's faces. You can hear it in the chat and in the hallways. You can actually tell what a value proposition or your branding is, usually just by watching and talking to people, the excitement that they have about that organization. It's about why would somebody come and work for your organization rather than any other organization. The value proposition as such then is about your values. It's also, though, about the experience that people have when they come and work for you, what that looks and feels like. But it's also, the value proposition is also about your benefits, your compensation. It's truly all-encompassing. But I don't want you to forget, and the intent here is to talk about the experience and what that means when people come and work for you. The nice thing about the value proposition, if you call it out and define it, as I mentioned before, you can actually measure it. And so the opportunity to measure the value proposition allows us to make sure that we're walking the talk. So all key things when we're thinking about the value proposition. And as I said, the value proposition helps us retain our good people if we define it properly and make sure that we're walking the talk. It allows us to set ourselves apart from other organizations. So if you spend time with your leaders defining what is it about your organization that is unique, what do you offer that nobody else offers? That's your recruitment strategy, and that's also your retention strategy. That's why some of your people, your best people, will stay and work for you, is because you are different and they like different. So again, a real reason why we want to spend time talking and defining our value proposition. The other thing about our value proposition is if we properly define it, we all understand it, our leaders understand it, we can also use that as a check to say then, what are our priorities when it comes to our people? Because we cross-reference it against the way we've defined our value proposition. So for example, if your value proposition involves working in a flat organization, if that's part of your value proposition where you've got an open door policy, for example, and lots of access to the top, what's your organizational structure going to look like? What are you going to strive for with your organizational structure if that's part of who you are and how you define yourself? Very flat, very flat. You're not going to have levels in levels. So that's why, again, really important to talk to your leaders, define who you are, how you do things, because that's going to be how you structure yourself. Not only your organization, but also the people in the programs and processes that you offer. Another statistic, different surveys show that back in 2014, so not that long ago, 36% of global employees reported talent shortages. And a more recent 2015 survey said that 73% of CEOs reported being concerned about the availability of key skills. So what this tells me is that even though we're in a recession, the war for talent, or our talent shortage, has not gone away. So when things start turning around, we're going to find people may exit, but we also may find it very difficult to attract people in. Again, another real reason why the value proposition is critical and key. The other reason why, what this statistics tell me is, as an HR professional, I always want to know what is it that keeps the CEO awake in the organization, because I need to pay attention to that. This statistic says that the CEO that I'm working for are worried that they're not going to be able to attract and retain the top talent, especially when things start turning around. Another reason why we need to pay attention to this strategy, to the value proposition. I wanted to help us get our heads around the value proposition. I want to talk about Starbucks for a minute. So about 3 years ago, I was on the main street of 7th Avenue Mall in Calgary, and I was between meetings and wanted a coffee. So I decided I'm going to go into Starbucks. I never have been a real Starbucks fan, but I needed a coffee, and it was right next door to where I needed to be, so I'm going into Starbucks. I waited 20 minutes for my coffee. I was almost late for my meeting, and a huge lineup, almost out the door. And I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I waiting 20 minutes for a coffee, right? Well, I wanted a coffee, so I needed a coffee, so I waited in line. But the point, so when I left there though, I thought, I'm going to go on the website for Starbucks and take a look at what are they all about? What is their value proposition? Because I wasn't quite getting it. But obviously a lot of people were. And the people that work there get it, they're happy, they're engaged. So I thought, I'm going to look at the value proposition for Starbucks. And what do you think the value proposition is for Starbucks? Anybody have any idea? What might be in that proposition? Oh my gosh, customer service, yes. What else? Yeah, quality product. Yeah. They love talking about their beans. They learn about their beans. They talk about their beans. And actually, when I was standing in line, the lady up from me was getting a whole lesson on the beans that were going into her coffee, because they learned, they developed their people to talk about their product, right? It's all about learning and development. And that's the value proposition for Starbucks. That's what the customer knows, which is the branding, right? Anybody that goes to Starbucks knows, or should know, you're not going to go there for a quick cup of coffee. If you're going to go for a quick cup of coffee, you should probably go to Tim's. Not at Starbucks. Things are a slower pace there. So the branding for Starbucks is about the customer experience. The branding, which is the value proposition for the employees, is the same messaging. Take time with the customers. Don't rush them. Let them enjoy their experience. There's congruency there with respect to the outward employment brand of Starbucks, and then the value proposition that the employees are experiencing. They got it right. So this is what I found when I went on to the value proposition for Starbucks. Now, this was a couple of years ago. This may have changed. I haven't checked it lately, but I'm sure it's very much the same. And again, things that I'm seeing in there is that learning and development, that management style, the work environment, culture, it's not rushed. So Starbucks, as far as I can see, have done a really good job of aligning their value proposition, the way the employees experience their work when they come to work, that relaxing, that customer service, of enjoying talking about their product, with what the customers actually feeling when they go there, relaxed. I talk about the bees, what's in my coffee. So they've really done a really good job of aligning the two. And for me, that's utopia. That's what you're striving for. Because they will only recruit people that, they should only recruit, and I think they do a good job of recruiting people that's the experience that they want to provide when they do their customer service each and every day. And that's why people stay there, right? Because they like that environment. So what are some other organizations that have a strong reputation and an employer value proposition that attracts and retains talent based on who they are? Can anybody think of another example? Or maybe there's even one here in Edmonton. Who might it be? Is there a suggestion? Okay, there's a good one, McDonald's. So what's the value proposition at McDonald's? What might it be? I actually was visiting my mom in a nursing home just about 3 weeks ago, and they actually had, McDonald's had an ad in their local little paper that they said, because they also talk to retirees. And anyways, one of the criteria they had for applying for a job at McDonald's, the one thing they asked for, guess what it was? Was it a grade 12 education? No. Was it lots of experience in retail? No. What was it? Actually, that's probably good, but that wasn't it. The only thing they asked for was a smile. That's about the customer experience, right? And so when you go there, what do you typically see? Well, hopefully you're seeing it. Honestly, I haven't been to a McDonald's lately, so I'm not sure. But the value proposition to me there is about having fun. It's about smiling. It's about serving the customer. So that's their value proposition. And that's what they call out in their ads. All we want to see when you come for an interview in this ad was bring your smile. And I thought that's really awesome, and that speaks to as I said, I haven't been to McDonald's for a while, so I'm not sure, but what they're striving for is that experience with the customer, that connection, and they're demonstrating that's their value proposition, or that's what they're striving to be with respect to their value proposition. How many have been to McDonald's lately, and is that what they experience? Is it? Okay, good. Yeah, as I said, it's been years since I've been in one. My kids are all grown up now, so I don't go to McDonald's. But so that's exactly what they've defined important to their value proposition, and they're calling it out in their ads. And I thought it was quite interesting. So this slide here just talks about the importance then of having your employer value proposition. So as an employer value proposition, we as employers define and call out what that is, right? We spend some time with our leaders. We make sure we've got that alignment with the employment, the marketing brand. That congruency there. That's your employer value proposition. But what we also want to make sure is that the employee value proposition matches your employer value proposition. So what do you think the employee value proposition is? Any idea? Employer value proposition, what the employer defines it, how the employer defines it, and the employee value proposition would be how the employee, the experience, right? So you want to make certain that you've got congruency there. So you want to make sure that you're congruent with the way the employer calls it out, how you as leaders call it out, and then what the employee is actually experiencing it. And again, that's where measurement comes in, and that's how we can actually go out and measure. Are we actually walking the talk? So it's not good enough just to define your employer value proposition. You've got to make certain that it's congruent with how the employees experience and what they're experiencing when they come to work every day. I have to share a story with you about 5 years ago, I started working with the president of a small oil and gas company, service company, and he was trying at the time, he was working with his marketing team to put together the employment brand. The marketing brand. That's the messaging out to the community about who they were. So he brought me in at that time and said, at the same time, I want to work on our employer value proposition, right? So the messaging that we're giving to our employees, which I thought, oh my God, this is great. Like, this is exactly what you should be doing when you develop your marketing brand and your branding for your employees. So I was working on that component. And so what he did is he said, I've defined what I think that should be. And he felt it was all about, family values. He was the founder. He started the company. So he felt his employer brand or value proposition was all about family. And that's why people came to work for him. He made certain that there wasn't red tape, always access to the top, could go in and see him, and he felt as though his employees were his parents. And that was how he felt that he was different from other organizations. And that's how he felt so he could attract and retain people just because of that. So he said, Jenna, I want you to go out now and find out what is it that the employees feel. He's going, oh, this is textbook, right? This is exactly what you should be doing. So I was delighted to be able to do that. So we did focus groups. It was so interesting because from what we heard from the employees versus how he perceived it. Do you think we had congruency? This is what the oil and gas service sector about 3 years ago. Do you know why people were coming to work for him and staying working for him? You know the number one thing? Money, he's okay. He's okay. The number one reason why people came, worked for him, and stayed working with him was money. The second reason people came and stayed and worked for him was because they felt family. That was the second, but the first was money. And I actually knew that because I saw the salary ranks and go, oh my gosh, yeah, people are coming here because of the money. But the proof is in the pudding. You go out and ask, that's how you measure. So I said back to him and he said, that's sad. That's sad. I want the number one reason to be because they feel family. They feel that connection and things like that. So what do you think he's doing in the longer term? He's correcting his comp issue and paying attention to making sure that he is paying attention to those, access to the top. He actually, as a result of that work, he started an employee council group where, he would bring his employees in every quarter and talk to a group of them. And he really worked on creating that experience for his employees where they would have access to the top, input at the top. And so when we resurvey them, hopefully in another year or so, we'll find that the reason people come to him and stay for him, or especially stay with him, because it's not so much of a recruitment strategy about that family values, because you have to experience that before you actually, decide to stay with the organization. So it truly is for him a retention strategy. And hopefully, he'll find that is the number one reason, because he definitely has been working on it. He's building his strategies around that, right? And paying close attention to his compensation. Nobody got cut as far as salaries goes, but he did pay closer attention to the way he was constructing his comp as a result of some of the work that he did there. So really, just another example of why it's so important to define that value proposition and then check in with your employees to say, are we walking the talk, are we doing what we're saying, and measuring it. The value proposition, truly a strategy that's not owned by human resources. This is a strategy that's owned by the organization. You can't do it on your own as an HR professional. And honestly, we can't do a lot of things on our own. If we're not working with the leaders of the organization, we're probably not going to hit the mark, and we certainly won't be able to walk the talk. So this is a strategy that you need to get your leaders in the room with, and you need to work with them. Don't do it to them, do it with them. And it's really important to get the value proposition right, defining who we are and what we want to be, by starting with your business strategy, by starting with your business and operations plan. what you have to do is you have to look out and say, where are we going? What do we need to be doing? What are we working towards? And then say, what are the behaviors? What are the values? What do we need to be in order to get there? And that's how you start defining your value proposition. And again, as you do that, then you build on your retention strategies based on that foundation, that definition. So again, you do it with your leaders, with your business strategy plan, create that definition, and then from that definition, you can support it with your programs and your processes, your people programs, and you can develop the measures that go with it. So analyzing data to say, are we doing what we said we're going to do? Are we walking the talk? Important. And how do others perceive us? So, you know, as leaders, we may think we've defined it right, we've got it right, but until we actually ask the questions and engage our people saying, what does it look like for you? What's the experience? We really don't know. The other thing with your value proposition is deliver the message consistently. So again, take time to define it. Make sure it's congruent with your external brand and continually and consistently use that messaging and how you've defined it throughout everything that you do. It's sort of like your mission, vision, and values. Don't just do it and then put it on the website or on your wall. Really work with it. It should be a working document that helps you make decisions. That's the true value in defining correctly your value proposition. So how do we measure? We've already talked about it a little bit. Survey your people. Keep it simple with your surveys though. Nowadays we've got SurveyMonkey, so it should not take a lot of time, resources to survey your people. You can pretty quickly define the right questions. Defining the right questions is probably the most important part of surveying your people. Make sure you're asking the right questions. And then do a little SurveyMonkey. In a lot of organizations that we're working with right now, surveying their people through SurveyMonkey is part of their culture. That's how they ask for feedback. How many here are using SurveyMonkey to get feedback from their people? And does it work for you? What does that look like? Is it good? Yeah. Sorry, nobody works? Right. Yeah. Do we need to use the mic? Yes. Sorry. So we're just talking about how you're utilizing SurveyMonkey to get feedback. Yeah.
Oh, yes, we use it for feedback for staff, annual performance reviews of managers. We also use it to survey our staff on training, how they're feeling about things, do they need anything, and I'm constantly surveying them. And we have a big professional development push in our organization, so I think that is one of the added value components to the quarter.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So monitor your, ask for input, and also monitor your retention statistics, right? So get data. We know from the previous slide that attracting and retaining your top talent keeps your CEO or your executive director away. So make sure that you're providing them statistics to help them sleep. So give them those retention statistics. Let them know how the organization's doing. Do exit interviews and also do stay interviews. So first of all, how many in the room do exit interviews? Okay, great. In your handout, we provided you with a sample exit interview. So if you're not doing them and you want some tips on how to do an exit interview, we provided a format for you, and tweak it and make it your own, but it's a starting place for you. How about stay interviews? First of all, does anybody know what a stay interview is, and are you doing them? I see a yes at the back. Can you share with us what you're doing?
Sorry, actually just came out of the last session from September. We actually just started implementing them with our new employees at about the 3-month range.
Right.
And then we'll again at the 9-month range.
So sorry, 3 and 9?
That's our plan.
3 months and 9 months.
We
good.
haven't got to 9 yet, but
Okay.
that's the plan.
Okay, great. And so you developed a format, a process to do that, have you? Okay, great. Okay. Some people asked, well, what does a stay interview looks like? What questions do you ask? Just take the exit interview questions and just ask them before people leave. So you can ask similar questions, but just do it before they exit. And do you do exit interviews on everybody? Or should you? Okay, so do you want to ask, so can you just explain, so you do it on everybody?
We'd like to do it on everybody. Sometimes it doesn't work
Right.
because they either have excuses for being busy or not having time to
Yeah.
complete one.
Right.
But we'd like to have all their input, regardless of what their position title is and how long they've been in the organization.
And I mean, that's a great goal to have, and thank you for that, to do exit interviews on everybody, but honestly, if you can't do it on everybody, who should you make sure you do it on? Who will you want to make certain that you capture for an exit interview? Any? Pardon? Exactly. Without a doubt, do it with your high performers. So the answer was, thank you, your high performers. Capture them for an exit interview because you want their feedback. And if you're doing stay interviews, my gosh, make sure you're doing stay interviews on your high performers, right? Finding out why they're staying with your organization. And then make sure you check it against your value proposition. Ask for their input. You know, the reason and what we promised you when you came into us with respect to your experience, what we would provide you, what we promised with respect to that. Are you actually experiencing that? And if not, what should you do? Well, I think you need it for the television, for the videoing. So if you don't mind, that'd be great.
The stay interview would be part of the onboarding process.
So you can build it into your onboarding. I always like the idea of building processes and aligning processes. So if you're going to do a stay interview, aligning it with your onboarding is an excellent idea. In that you would say in so many months or in whatever point we're going to do a stay interview. So build it on and align it with your orientation. You can definitely do that, and you can decide to do that at 3 months, at 6 months, at 9 months, a year. But align it with your orientation. That's part of it. I mean, you can orientate people for 6 years to 6 months to a year, right? So build it into your process. Because if you don't build it into your process, it might get forgotten.
So the surveying part, that's something I would like to build up in our organization. What do you recommend? How often do you need to survey people? Or is it only when you're trying to address a specific thing?
Let me put it back to the group. How often are you, I know there's a number of people in this room here that are surveying your people. How often are you doing it? Pardon? Quarterly, okay. This lady here, sorry, I forgot your name again, it's Ina. Ina's surveying every quarter. Who else is surveying? You're surveying. Sorry, I forgot your name. Lindsay, how often are you surveying your people?
I would say annually.
Annually. Okay. Anybody else? Over here. Okay.
And the truth makes something happen.
Okay, so it's basically specific to the situation. You're not saying I do it if you've got a question, you ask it, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite general. We don't have the action plan to be
Right. So the right answer is, it's all over the place. There is no one right answer. But I do like your suggestion is we do have an action plan. We're trying to obtain something. We need something. We need some information. We're going to do something with that information when we get it. That's an action item. That's a perfect time to do a survey. So really, yesterday in Red Deer, we had somebody in the group. They were surveying their people. Can you believe it? 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they stopped the Friday survey because they thought it was a bit of much, and guess what happened? People asked for it back. So obviously they're very, very good at, they're a growing organization, there's lots of things changing, they want input. When I heard 3 times a week, I went, oh my gosh, but yes, that's what they said. So there's no right or wrong answer, but what is the right answer for sure? If you're asking for information, make darn sure you're doing something with it and you're getting back to people, right? Because otherwise people get turned off real quickly when it comes to surveys. So yeah, there really isn't. But to make them the real person, there's a real reason to ask. It's genuine, and you're going to do something with that information. That's where you survey. So thank you for that feedback. Okay. So make sure, so again, you've defined your value proposition, you've defined that with your leaders, you're surveying your people, you're looking at your statistics to make sure you're walking the talk, so it's not something that you've defined and then put on the shelf. Again, trends are way too complicated surveys. I mean, we've got the tools within our own organization. As long as you, as I say, you're asking the right questions, you can do a lot of surveying yourself, and it can be very cost effective. The other way, if you're not surveying through SurveyMonkey, is bring your people together for focus groups. So we find that that works really well. And again, it's a chance to bring the team together and ask for input. But again, make sure there's a genuine reason for asking and make sure you're doing something with the responses, right? So if you're asking to check in about your value proposition, tell people that that's what you're doing. Share with them the results. And then if you find something, have the commitment from your leaders that you can actually do something about it. Otherwise, don't ask. Be real. That's what employees are looking for. You know, be candid, straightforward. No hidden agendas. No hidden agendas. Act on your feedback and benchmark, measure. We talked about retention strategy, some of your retention measurements. Because what we know about our leaders today is they expect HR to measure. It's not good for us, it's not good enough for us to say these days, oh, well, that's kind of like a soft skill, we really can't measure that. That doesn't work anymore. We need to find a way to measure, and there are ways to measure. And our leaders expect it, and they should. For us to keep the programs in place, it costs money, so we need to make sure that there's a return on that investment. A little exercise for us, and we're going to take a couple of minutes to do it. Just a quick chat at your table. When we do focus groups and trying to capture and measure the value proposition, are we walking the talk? We'll get people in a room and we'll ask them this question: how would you complete the following sentence? The ideal at our company is that every person who works here, and get the employees to finish it, and then to be successful employee at our company, 1 month. So just talk very shortly at your tables. How would you answer those 2 questions about your company? And get a feel for what that conversation would look like if you took that back to your organization. Real quick. We're going to move forward, but hopefully that little exercise will give you a feel for what might you do to create conversation within your own organization about your value proposition and measuring whether or not you're actually walking the talk. And don't worry about, I don't know the answer to that question. We don't have to have the answers. Put it out to our people and let them see what happens, right? Get a response. Get them talking, right? And that's truly how we, actually that's how we get great feedback. So not too controlling, right? Just put the question out there and let's see what you get as far as the reaction. So measuring again, we talked about some retention statistics. So I just wanted to share with you as an example that you can get good retention statistics. So go call them out. You don't have to do a lot. Do one or two, but go after some and define what they are and then find out where you can get them. And if you're going to look at retention statistics, again, look at your top performers because we know that's what your CEO or your executive director wants to know. They want to know about their top performers because they're worried that they may lose them. So give them information that basically said, how do you compare based on your benchmark? How many here are not-for-profits? Okay, so are you using the Bolin survey? Okay, all right, because the Bolin survey will provide that information for you. So make sure that you're looking into that particular survey, and if you're not utilizing. Now, I'm not sure whether the Bolin survey actually has the top quartile performer in that survey. Does anybody know? Okay, so if it doesn't, we actually just did a workshop with them, and they're actually asking for input from people that are using the survey. Ask for them to capture this data in the future because this is data that you need. So if it's not in there, ask them to start gathering data on that, and they're quite open to do that. So then you'll actually have the information that your CEO or your executive director wants. For your exit questionnaires, again, another way for you to measure, we've got some sample questions in your handouts, and please feel free to use them. Remember, one size doesn't fit all. So the experience, your value proposition, or what we believe as leaders, what that should be to attract and retain our best people. Measure it, and what you may find is that it will depend. It could be a generational thing. Your one generation may want something different than another generation in your workplace. You may find that because we know for sure one size fits all. Somebody from my generation may want a different work experience than somebody that's in their 20s. Without a doubt, they will. So what you need to do again, though, is make sure you define it, check in, and then decide what is important to you as an organization. And then it will again help you make decisions. Not that one generation is right or wrong, but it'll allow you to test to say what is the majority of people, what generation is most in your workforce. We know for sure millennials, for example, constitute the major portion of our workforce today. Now that may or may not be the case in your organization, but we know for sure in many organizations we need to pay attention to their experience because they are making up quite a bit of our workforce. So again, what are they experiencing? What are they feeling versus how we define it? And is there congruency there? Just a quote to hopefully demonstrate one size doesn't fit all. People are not and never have been exactly the same. They have different needs, performance levels, personalities, work styles, motivation, and goals. When you honor this reality, you will be more likely to honor each person for who they really are. You cannot lose by being fair. You can and will lose by treating everyone the same. And for me, I've been in the workforce for over 20 years, and I would say even 6-7 years ago, we strived for consistency. We strived for the same all the time. That was the way we did things, and that's so not the way we do things now. But what we do realize that one size doesn't fit all. So we strive for fairness, but not always the same. So what I'd like to just to wrap, and what I'd ask you to do as you leave here after this session is you think about what can I take from what I've heard, and what's at least one thing that I can do differently when I go back to the workplace, because I truly believe it's a lost opportunity if we leave here and just say, well, that was nice. Really stretch yourself and challenge yourself to say, there's at least one thing that I've learned or talked about this morning that I can go back and I can share with my organization and start making a difference with respect to defining your value proposition. Because if you take one message and one message alone, it's a foundational piece. It's the beginning of putting additional strategies in place. Then please go back and have that conversation with your leaders and take an effort in defining and measuring your value proposition. Thank you.